Part 33. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 323. New dishes were quickly brought out, all meat dishes. If it weren't for the presence of others in the private room, Mu Yangling would have supported his forehead, and then beat Chi Heiran violently, which is really embarrassing. It's okay to lose face, but it was thrown in front of Fang's Hifu. Master Fang politely invited Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling to eat, and even Ziyuheng Xiaolan and Bowen who were sitting beside him also greeted them. He glanced at the blog post appreciatively, and asked with a smile, "I heard that the young master is studying? I don't know which academy he is in." Bowen answered respectfully. "It's not time for the winter break yet, so is the young master here to practice?" Bowen glanced at his sister and saw that she didn't intend to interfere, so he smiled and said, "Our husband is sick, so he let us go on winter break in advance, and my mother said that reading thousands of books is not as good as traveling thousands of miles, and I am not too young. Let me come out with my sister to see it." Mrs. Fang nodded and said appreciatively, "Mrs. Mu is very kind-hearted. Many people know this truth, but very few are willing to let their children go out. No wonder Miss Mu and the young master are so capable at such a young age, and they are born with a good heart, the heart of the assistant bodhisattva. It turned out to be taught by such a loving mother." Mu Yangling couldn't help coughing twice. Now even Xiaolan could tell that Fang's Hifu wanted something from them. "If you don't ask clearly about this, I'm afraid the meal will not taste good no matter how you eat it." Mu Yangling put down his chopsticks, and said with a smile, "My lord has given you too much credit. I don't know why your lord invited us here this time." Fang's Hifu didn't expect Mu Yangling to be so direct. He hesitated for a moment, and asked cheekily, "I heard that Miss Mu's cattle farm is going to expand." Mu Yangling nodded with a smile, "I would like to thank Mr. Fang, because you gave us 500 mu of land for the cattle farm, so I decided to expand the scale." Fang's Hifu said with a smile, "In fact, this scale can still be expanded. Lord Fang, I plan to raise 1,000 cows now. This is a huge expense. I won't be able to afford it no matter how old I am. Besides, the land is also a problem." "The land is not a problem," Fang's Hifu immediately said with a smile, "Miss Mu, to the west and 20 miles north of your cattle farm, there is no one on that land, and those lands are now under the name of the Imperial Court. If you don't worry about it, I will sign a contract with you, and I will never use that piece of land for 10 years, nor will I sell or rent it. How about it?" Now even Chi Heiran opened his mouth wide. Chi Heiran turned his head to look at the two of them carefully. Didn't they look alike? Shouldn't it be the wrong child or the lost father and daughter? Mu Yangling never believed that the world would fall into the pie. She asked more carefully, "I don't know what the conditions of Mr. Fang are." "It's easy to say, Master Fang said with a smile. "If Miss Mu expands the cattle farm, it will definitely require a lot of workers to help mow the grass, right? I happen to have 6,000 people on hand. How about asking them to help you? Don't ask Miss Mu to treat them too favorably. As long as this is enough, she will be responsible for their 3 meals a day, and a caddy of food for each person every day is enough, whether it is corn kernels or black flour." Mu Yangling stammered, "Lord Fang, even if I expand the cattle farm, it won't take 6,000 people." "That's right," Ziyuheng took the conversation and said worriedly, "and we still have to save money to buy calves. We don't have enough money to buy calves. How can we feed 6,000 people? This is Miss Mu's business. Miss Mu, this condition is only available now, it will be different after spring, and now Hanshong Mansion has gradually settled down, and there will be more and more immigrants in the future, so this land it will only become more and more expensive, and I have taken a big risk to make a 10-year promise." Fang's Hifu said, "I know that Miss Mu has great ambitions and skills. If nothing else, the cattle farm will definitely expand in the future, but the land has to be bought or rented, not to mention buying, How can it cost thousands of taels of silver to rent this thousands of acres of land for a year? Chi Heiran curled his lips. Prefect Fang, don't bully us. We don't know when we are young. Han's Hong Mansion is a border gate. If you walk 20 miles north of Niuchain, you may meet a golden soldier in 3 steps. Where will you go to buy land? Even if the other land in Han's Hong Mansion is sold out, I'm afraid that piece of land will not be sold, right? Fang's Hifu smiled and said, isn't this the 5th battalion of the little general to be stationed there? The barbarians are frightened when they hear the news, why won't they be sold? Although Chi Heiran is self-satisfied, he can still distinguish between flattery and reality. The barbarians lose their courage only after hearing about my elder brother, not me. Chi Heiran rolled his eyes and said, this cow farm, even if it is expanded, it will take 6,000 people 10 days and half a month to complete the project. Fang's Hifu said with a smile, how can it be so fast? At least 1 month must be done. Mu Yangling secretly scolded the old fox. 1 month, responsible for 1 day's food, plus 1 caddy of grain a day, the food saved would be enough for these 6,000 people to survive the winter. It was equivalent to the people Mu Yangling helped them raise for a whole winter. She calculated in her mind that if she had enough money to buy enough calves, it was not impossible, on the contrary, it was very cost-effective. Mu Yangling glanced at the smiling Fang's Hifu, and felt that he should not be the one to suffer, so he said, it's not impossible, I will hire them for a month, but Fang's Hifu, the procedures must be completed, I will do things like to sign a good contract. Sure, I will write down the first article in detail when the time comes. The first one, Mu Yangling smiled, and said softly, I thought it was all the conditions. Fang's Hifu said with a serious face, how is this possible? That is the right to use dozens of hectares of land for 10 years. Miss Mu, although I don't know about merchants, I can still calculate. But Hifu Fang, no one wants your piece of land right now, unless Dezhou can take over the Jingzhou mansion and keep it within 5 years, after another 10 years, someone might buy or rent that piece of land. Don't say that you are giving me that land now, but in fact, if you don't give it to me, no one will say anything if I drive my cattle there to graze. Fang's Hifu blushed. Of course he also knew this, the Han people are different from the Hu people. The Hu people will fight for grassland, but the Han people fight for the land for planting. If the land is not used for planting, the grass growing on it will really be ugly. If it belongs to the public, it doesn't matter if you cut it, or herd sheep and cattle, even if it is set on fire, as long as it doesn't affect the mountains and forests, no one will say anything. Unlike the barbarians, those who cross the pasture to graze are shouting and killing. It was because he knew that the Hu people were too close to that land that no one would want it, so he wanted to exchange it with Mu Yangling for something useful. For example, helping these 6,000 people survive this winter, for example, the winter clothes she is making for the children in the cattle farm, and the nursery. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 324. Fang's Hifu gave Chi Heiran a sad look. Although he was careful enough, there were still many children and orphans in the list. He couldn't ignore them. I can't control it either. In the past few days, those 6,000 people have already made him poor, and he was almost ruined. Fang's Hifu glared at Chi Heiran again. If the 2 brothers of the Chi family hadn't emptied the government office when they rushed in, why would he be here? The most important thing is that his aid reports to the imperial court have been returned all the time. Without foreign aid, just relying on the little tax this year is really not enough. So Fang's Hifu could only focus on Mu Yangling. Hearing Fang's Hifu's proposal to provide children under the age of 12 with a set of winter clothes and let orphans under the age of 12 enter the nursery, Mu Yangling couldn't help but frown and said dissatisfiedly, Master Fang, you are a parent official, don't you have a way to accommodate them? It's not that I'm evading, even if you don't have a clear picture of my family background, you should be able to make a rough guess. Do you think I can accommodate these 6,000 people? Fangs Hifa coughed lightly, his ears turned red, and said, that's why I said I want to discuss with Miss Mew. You can ask for anything you want, and I will definitely satisfy what I can meet. Mu Yangling narrowed his eyes, but Bowen said first, since that's the case, Mr. Fang, why don't you give us those lands, let alone raising them this winter, it's okay to raise them again next winter. Not only Fang's Hifu, but also Mu Yangling almost fell off the chair. She glared at her brother, but she did not object out of the principle of not embarrassing him outside. Seeing that Mu Yangling was silent, Fang's Hifu said helplessly, Mr. Mu was joking, how could I just give away these dozens of hectares of land? The 10-year use period I won for you before is already large. It took a lot of work. Master Fang refused so quickly, so it's obvious that he is not sincere, Mu Bowen said, of course I know that this matter is difficult, but 6,000 people are not easy to support, and you also have many orphans under the age of 12, these people are sent to the nursery, food, clothing, and reading are all a lot of expenses. Mu Bowen saw Fang's Hifu's brows getting tighter and tighter, so he said, how about this, extend 10 years to 20 years, what do you think? This will be the same as the previous time limit of 500 mu. Fang's Hifu was silent for a long time, and said, let me think about it carefully, how about this, I will give you an answer in 3 days, how about it? Mu Bowen looked at his sister, Mu Yangling nodded slightly, and the two sides reached a consensus, and then they were in the mood to eat. Several people swept away a table of food, Fang's Hifu marveled at their stomachs, and then got up to leave. Ziyuheng went to ask for a pot of tea and came in, and everyone gathered around the table for a meeting. Mu Yangling asked Qi Heiren, isn't the magistrate Fang so out of touch? He took him to a place where he didn't settle down. He asked them to build roads, but most of them were old and weak, especially those half-grown children. They were not strong, but they ate a lot. The government office didn't have much food. He asked someone to borrow food, but it seemed that they were. How did it go smoothly? Qi Heiren explained. Mu Yangling frowned, and said, when you entered the city, you didn't rob them of everything, did you? Did you leave anything for them? Qi Heiren stared, and said confidently, our people rushed in with all their might, so naturally there must be some rewards, otherwise, who would charge forward? The common people can't rob, there are only so many dignitaries left behind in the Hanshong mansion in the kingdom of Jin, what else can they rob besides the mansion? Anyway, at that time, the government office was also the government office of the kingdom of Jin. Thinking of this, Qi Heiren became angry, and snorted coldly, after taking back the Hanshong mansion, according to the regulations, the imperial court will provide support, but it has been almost 2 years since the imperial court sent us anything. Confidence, not even superficial perfunctory. Mu Yangling swallowed, and said, don't tell me that the imperial court is half giving up on Hanshong mansion. An angry look appeared on Qi Heiren's face, but he did not refute. Mu Yangling slapped the table with a slap, and asked, why? Haven't we been guarding for 2 years? Now that the Jin soldiers are blocked by us outside the city, and they can't enter the Hanshong mansion, why does the court still do this? Hanshong mansion is not like Xingzhou mansion. Xingzhou mansion has Xingcheng Pass. As long as you guard the pass, you can stop a large number of Jin soldiers from going south. However, the terrain outside Hanshong mansion is wide, and the border line with Jingzhou mansion is too long, and it is almost flat. There are a few sporadic mountain ranges lying there, and it is very easy to be besieged. Qi Heiren said, that is to say, they failed 3 times in a row before, otherwise Hanshong mansion will be attacked now. Aling, if it is only the defenders of Jingzhou mansion and I big brother is not afraid, but if one day the Jin soldiers want to attack aggressively, we will not be able to defend Hanshong mansion, so we can only abandon it and retreat to Xingzhou mansion. Didn't you move the Western Battalion here? Instead, you just sent some troops from each battalion here. Chi Heiran sighed and said, we have set up such defenses to prepare for that eventuality, but I am not convinced that the imperial court has tacitly lost the Hanshong mansion. Since the Hanshong mansion is not easy to guard, then we should go and snatch the Jingzhou mansion too. Isn't there a pass in the Jingzhou mansion? Bowen interjected. Chi Heiran was happy. Good boy, you have ambition, that's what I told my elder brother, but my elder brother said that there are too many defenders in Jingzhou mansion. We have just experienced a big war, we should not start a war in the short term, wait with a fighting opportunity. Chi Heiran looked at several people with piercing eyes, his meaning was self-evident. Mu Bowen was eager to try. Chi fourth brother, you can take me with you when the time comes. Mu Yangling slapped him down, if the wind blows, he will fall down, why are you coaxing? Mu Bowen said unconvinced, my body has recovered. Mr. Dada said that I am about the same height as my peers. Then let's wait until you are taller than your peers and learn basic life-saving methods, Mu Yangling said with a smile, or I will send you to my father and tell him that you want to follow. Chi Heiran went to the battlefield together. Chi Heiran rolled his eyes, Mu Yangling, can you stop being so fickle, call me brother Heiran in front of elders and when you ask me for something, and call me fourth brother Chi in front of outsiders. People call me by first and last name, but those who don't know think I have a grudge against you. We are the only ones in this private room who would misunderstand, Mu Yangling said unconvinced, don't you even call me by my first name? Don't think I don't know, you and Fan Zijian have a mouthful of Mu Yangling, I don't know how fluent it is. Chi Heiran blushed slightly, and then refused to recognize her. When did you hear that? I always called you Ling, and I only called you by your first name when I first met you. Zai Hung hurriedly adjusted and said, okay, fourth brother Chi, my cousin is used to it since she was a child, we grew up with my cousin, and when my cousin sees her cousin, sometimes she calls her by his first and last name. Xiaolin and Bowen quickly nodded to testify. Cousin calls you by first and last name not because she is alienated from you, but because it is a habit. After all, we are not used to calling you brother Heiran either. Xiaolin and Bowen nodded again. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 325. The nursery has been half completed, and Chi Heiran took Mu Yangling over to look at it, look at what needs to be changed, and then let them do it together. Mu Yangling looked around and was very satisfied. That's it, build more. Are you really planning to agree to Fang's Hifu? Chi Heiran disapproved. This is in the military camp, those children are military households, and whether to favor or suppress them is our own business. It is to buy people's hearts. The eldest brother has military power in his hands, which can easily be misunderstood. Mu Yangling smiled and said, I know, Fang's Hifu will give us a guarantee then. Chi Heiran's heart moved. In this way, Fang's Hifu is completely tied to them. Although the military and government have been separated, if they can establish a good relationship with the local officials, it will be more convenient for them to do things in the future. Then I have to go back and discuss with my brother. Discuss. No need, Mu Yangling said, Brother Chi had better pretend he didn't know about this matter, just us young ones, otherwise Fang's Hifu might change his mind. Chi Heiran chuckled, he will definitely regret finding you. Who said that? I'm so kind, and I've helped him raise so many children, Mu Yangling said confidently, it's a matter of getting what we need. Well, it's a game at best. Who made him look down on us because of our age? Chi Heiran also said solemnly, well, maybe he will learn a lot of wisdom from a fall, so he won't underestimate the enemy in the future. It's still a good thing for him. Mu Yangling turned to look at the three younger ones, and educated them, See? This is the end of judging people by their appearance and underestimating the enemy. Even if you haven't suffered this loss, remember, don't underestimate your opponent easily in the future, buddy, it cannot be taken lightly either. Bowen nodded fiercely. Only Ziyuheng and Xiaolan were still a little at a loss, not understanding where Fang's Hifu suffered a disadvantage. Mu Yangling and Qi Heiran went to see the canteen for the children, and Bowen explained to them in a low voice, the generals stationed are not allowed to collude with the local officials. Not so good, Fang's Hifu just came, the court didn't give him food relief, he can only rely on Big Brother Qi to frighten the local gentry to collect taxes or borrow food, so Big Brother Qi has a good relationship with him, at least not like seeing Zhou the relationship deteriorated like that of Wu's Hifu in the government. Xiaolan asked in a low voice, what does that have to do with us making him suffer? Listen to Bowen, don't interrupt, Ziyuheng pulled her. Xiaolan immediately shut up, showing seriousness in listening. Of course it has something to do with it. The imperial court is very afraid of military generals. Military generals of the third rank and above will keep their family members in Beijing as hostages. This shows how the imperial court guards against generals, right? We only opened kindergartens to adopt military households. Orphans, because their life and death are decided by the military camp, so they are not considered to buy people's hearts, and the court will not care about them, but the people sent by Fang's Hifu are different. They are all good citizens. Brother Qi is the one who bears the blame. Ziyuheng curled her lips, and said disdainfully, is it wrong to do good deeds? Is it a good person to watch those children starve to death? This is a taboo of the imperial court. In the past dynasties, there have been many rebels who bribed people's hearts. Of course, those who rebelled successfully are not considered rebels. In short, Brother Qi can't do this, so my sister said that Fang's Hifu should make a promise. Bowen chuckled, there is no censor in Hanshong Mansion. Although he is still young, because Mr. Lu wants to take the imperial examination, he is the most valued by Mr. Lu. After class, Mr. Lu often talks to him about current affairs, and his sister often brings back Brother Qi's residence newspaper to read, so he can know so much. The imperial court has not yet dispatched a censor to the Hanshong Mansion, and now the people left in the mansion are all the petty officials who used to work in the Jin State's Yamen, and the officials who came with the Fang's Hifu have also been demoted or semi-exiled here. Yes, as long as Fang's Hifu controls them, the news will not reach the ears of the imperial court, and it will be very easy for Big Brother Qi and the others to do anything in the future. Xiaolan didn't understand what Big Brother Qi and the others were going to do to hide from the court, and she wasn't very interested in these things, so she turned her head to look at the already built house next to her a little bored. But Ziyuheng looked at the blog post with piercing eyes and said, I know, for example, if you want to rob things from the kingdom of Jin, Fang's Hifu and the others won't make small reports. Bowen grinned, this is just one aspect, and it has many benefits for us. Our cattle farm, Brother Qi's horse farm, and many of Brother Fan's businesses are all in Hanshong Mansion, all of which have to deal with the government office. If Fang's Hifu becomes a fellow, how convenient do you think we are? Then let's quickly agree to Fang's Hifu, Ziyuheng said happily, why are you procrastinating? That won't work. We have to talk about this matter slowly. If we promise too early, we will suffer in the future. Now that we have suffered a loss, we have to get it back anyway, Bowen said happily. Fortunately, although we will lose a lot of money, but it's worth it to pull Fang's Hifu into a boat. Bowen saw that Xiaolan was standing aside with little interest, and he was dissatisfied. Sister Xiaolan, mother asked you to learn more from Sister Ziyuheng, so as to gain insight, why don't you listen? Xiaolan pouted and said, I don't understand what you're talking about, and I don't like it either. I still like reading and embroidery. Ziyuheng nodded her forehead and said, what a nerd, you should stay at home from now on. No, Bowen said forcefully, My sister said that Sister Xiaolin will be easily bullied in the future, and she has to learn to be strong, so you should stay with us. If you don't understand, I can teach you. Xiaolin was discouraged and thought she could go home. She muttered dissatisfiedly, my cousin was not bullied either. That's because my cousin and cousin are protecting you, Ziyuheng said. Can you marry someone like your cousin? Can you have a girl who is as powerful as your cousin? Bowen is right, you just don't like it. You also need to learn more, or you won't know how to complain if you eat it after being dismantled. Xiaolin's face turned red when she heard the topic of marriage, and she followed her forward obediently after being held by her sister, not daring to say anything against it. Seeing her aggrieved look, Ziyuheng couldn't help but feel angry. Why didn't she know how to say it when she was aggrieved? He does this to his own sister, so if he gets wronged when he goes out in the future, don't he even know what to say? Ziyuheng immediately decided to train her younger sister's temper. Xiaolin, who just came to gain knowledge, did not expect that she would be tricked, and then she was changed into a tattered dress by her sister and thrown into the group of children to mow grass together. Because she was so talkative, she was very energetic. Bully her. Xiaolin's eyes were red and swollen, thinking that her sister would ask, but who knew she would turn a blind eye, so Xiaolin, who never complained, began to stammer and complain to her sister. Of course, that's for later. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 326. The kindergarten plans to build 3 large canteens. In the future, the children will eat in the canteens. In addition to building classrooms, because there are many children of all ages, they will be taught separately. Learn various crafts. Among them, you need to buy a lot of tools. To learn carpentry, you need saws, knives and other things, right? Those who learn to calculate accounts must have an abacus or something, right? This pass also cost a lot of money. Qi Heiran was showing Mu Yangling a tour with a proud face at first, but he couldn't help but worry when he saw what she wrote down later. Do you have enough money? It's okay, if it's not enough, just ask Zijin for it. That's right, Zijin has money. Qi Heiran immediately felt relieved. If you don't want to ask, I'll get it for you. Mu Yangling stopped his hands, raised his head and asked him, have you gone to He Zijin to get money again recently? Qi Heiran nodded. The barbarians have a machete that is very useful. I plan to distribute it to the cavalry battalion. I bought 500 of them in one go, so I spent a lot of money. Mu Yangling hated iron for being weak and said, no matter how much money Fan Zijin earns, it's not enough for you to spend like this. Why do you have to buy 500? Buy a dozen or so, and ask the craftsman to study it slowly. Now, can't you fight yourself? The knife was smuggled from Jin Kingdom. Qi Heiran nodded. Otherwise, where do you think it came from? If it was in our Dazhu, I would have brought someone to seal the shop, so I saved the money. The imperial court had very strict control over iron, and folk blacksmiths had to obtain documents from the government office, and there was a limit to the amount of pig iron they could buy each time. Qi Heiran bought 500 in one go, which was impossible in Dazhu. Mu Yangling felt even more distressed. The price of this kind of weapon was not low because it was smuggled from the kingdom of Jin. She reluctantly asked, how much is a handful? Qi Heiran touched his head and smiled, it's not particularly expensive, 45 taels. Mu Yangling almost wanted to stretch his feet to be kicked away. That's enough to buy a pony. That knife is indeed good. It is sharp and durable. I will bring you one later. You can try it. After all, you are going to cross the border. The other party also bought it from Jinbing with a lot of money, so it is more expensive. Mu Yangling gritted his teeth, and then said enviously, I wish I had a Fan Zijin too. No matter how much it costs, someone will pay for it. She took advantage of Fan Zijin a little bit, it was like killing him. You should give the knives to the craftsmen to study and study. If you find a few more people, you will definitely be able to type them out. Then you won't have to buy them again. It's a waste of money. Mu Yangling asked Chi Heiran to buy something in the future. Discuss with her or Fan Zijin, their money is not from the wind, it is all hard-earned. Especially Fan Zijin, in order to make money, he even delayed his schoolwork. I heard that Chi Ziyuan was arrested 2 days ago and went back to study in the study. My elder brother wants Zijin to go back to take the imperial examination, which will be the provincial examination every 3 years next year. Mu Yangling couldn't help but stop. Is Fan Zijin a scholar? Chi Heiran glanced at her, and proudly said, otherwise, what do you think? He was a child student at the age of 9, and he was a scholar at the age of 11. Even in Linen Mansion, he is also a well-known talent. He is good at homework. The teacher of our academy, that is to say, he will be able to play in another round, at least there is a 70% chance of winning, and next year will happen to be the second round, ha ha ha, a 16-year-old Juran. Ha ha ha, how about it, Zijin is amazing, right? Mu Yangling knew that Fan Zijin was smart, but he never thought he was so smart. The rural examination is even more difficult than the college entrance examination in their previous lives. Although they come and go with those few books, to answer the questions well, there is not 1 or 2 extracurricular books. You should also read it roughly, and talk about a historical event, no matter how big or small it is. Of course, it may not be too difficult for those who have gone through the college entrance examination in the previous life. They have read all the books, and they have done it, but how to select 200 students out of 30,000 to 40,000 students? This selection rate is too small, and there are more students in Linen Prefecture. There are nearly 80,000 people competing for more than 200 places in the provincial examination, not to mention the ability to compete for the 500 places. Quota. Mu Yangling sighed sincerely, but still said, Fan Zijin has been focusing on doing business for the past 2 years, what do you think his chances of winning are? Chi Heiran was silent. Mu Yangling sighed and said, I think it's better to let him wait for another 3 years, that's more sure. Mu Yangling glanced at him, and said, you also save him a little bit, maybe he put it in more time for homework. Chi Heiran was stunned for a while, then nodded and said, okay, let him study hard. Then Mu Yangling, you can help him, you can also do business, you take over some, so that he has more time to study. Mu Yangling rolled his eyes bluntly, and said, which eye of yours sees that I can do business? I only know how to farm, sell sheep and raise cattle. I might as well leave it to the steward below. That's true, Chi Heiran nodded and said, you look smart, but you are actually very stupid. Mu Yangling glared at him, how stupid am I? Chi Heiran chuckled, I don't believe you're stupid, but it seems like you're going to lose money or die when you run a kindergarten, but you insist on doing it. If you're not stupid, what is it? I'm happy with it. Mu Yangling raised his head, turned and left. Chi Heiran hurriedly chased after him, and said in a low voice, I'm leaving Hanshong Mansion in these 2 days, so give me the winter solstice gift you gave me tomorrow. When did I say I would give you a winter solstice gift? Looking at Chi Heiran, who was looking at her eagerly, Mu Yangling didn't say this, but nodded, be careful yourself. He didn't ask him where he was going. Chi Heiran's round face was immediately filled with a smile, and he nodded cheerfully, I must pay attention to safety. When Mu Yangling went back, she was thinking about what gift she should give Chi Heiran. Ziyuheng came to her with the account book, cousin, I have already negotiated with the cotton cloth merchant and cotton, this is the price, but who do we ask to sew it? It will be very expensive to hand over to a clothing store. Fang's Hifa won't delay for long. When the time comes, people will be sent to pick people from the inside. All the women who can make clothes will be left to make clothes. Later, you will call out a few children who are tall and measure them. Just follow there, make the large size, medium size, and small size, and send the task down. Ziyuheng responded and took a note of what Mu Yangling said. Keep your eyes open when supervising. Don't let people take things out. We have little money. If we ask people to go out, the clothes really won't be enough for the children to wear. Ziyuheng hesitated and said, Cousin, those old people are also very pitiful. I know, but now we can only take care of the children first. You can also ask someone to pay attention to the elderly. If you have a headache, remember to call the doctor. The medical expenses will be charged to our account. I don't want to even think about making winter clothes for the elderly. Her current budget is going to exceed all the savings in the family. Now she can only pin her hopes on Qin Butcher and Hua Butcher. Go out, maybe you can earn more money to buy winter clothes for them before the coldest weather. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 327. The few of them are now living in the house on the cattle farm. Although it is newly built, it is not cold because the walls are thick enough and have been smoked before. Mu Yangling found a black leather jacket from the bottom of the box. It was made for the old man, and there were still 2 sleeves unfinished. He wanted to give him a New Year's gift. Since Ji Heiran wanted a gift for the winter solstice, then send him off, and make another one for Dad later. Mu Yangling cut off the half-finished sleeves with scissors. Ziyuheng, who was at the side to settle accounts, exclaimed, Cousin, why did you cut off the sleeves? Just like this, it's similar to a short jacket, without the sleeves. Mu Yangling measured it with a tape measure, planning to make the clothes smaller overnight. Ziyuheng bit her pen and said, But didn't you say it's tight-fitting? How can you wear it like this? Why can't you wear it like this? You can just put it on, and no one would know that you're wearing this one if you wear so many clothes outside. It's for self-defense, not for keeping warm and looking good. Seeing that Mu Yangling changed the clothes to a smaller size, Ziyuheng was stunned and asked, Isn't it for my cousin? I will make another one for my father when he returns. This is a winter solstice gift for Ji Heiran. Ziyuheng blushed slightly, looked at her with bright eyes, but said worriedly, Cousin, will big brother Qi agree? Mu Yangling didn't know why Qi Ziyuan agreed to give Ji Heiran a gift, so she nodded indiscriminately, yes. Looking at the busy Mu Yangling, Ziyuheng breathed a sigh of relief, propped her chin and smiled. Mu Yangling spent the whole night changing her clothes, and she finally finished it before dawn. She took out a round breastplate from the bottom of the box and put it where her heart was, and sealed the opening with a thick thread. Sew it on and touch it. Although the protrusion is not good looking, it can save your life at a critical moment. Mu Yangling handed the gift to Ji Heiran with her own hands. I don't know if it was her illusion, but she always felt that Ji Heiran's face was a little red and his eyes were frighteningly bright. Ji Heiran took the leather jacket and was about to change it after taking off the clothes. Mu Yangling hurriedly said, It's getting cold, don't be confused, change it when you go back to the house, and see if there is anything inappropriate. You bring me to change again. Ji Heiran nodded, put away his clothes, and said with a straight face, I will definitely come back alive, and I will tell my brother as soon as I come back. After finishing speaking, without waiting for Mu Yangling to reply, he turned around and jumped on his horse and ran away. Fei Bai scrambled on his horse to catch up, and waved goodbye to Mu Yangling while chasing back. Mu Yangling swallowed the question that came to his lips, shook his head, and went back. Fang's Hifo has sent someone to send a message, saying that she has agreed to Mu Yangling's request. Today she will go to the Yamen to sign a contract with him. Well, he needs to issue a certificate. The nursery is run by the military and the government. Mu Yangling quickly forgot about giving Ji Heiran a gift, but Ziyuheng remembered it in her heart, and wrote it in when she wrote to Xu Wanyang, indicating that Aunt Biao could start preparing the dowry for her cousin. Xu Huanyang just sighed when she received the letter. She felt that her daughter was so courageous that she agreed to the marriage without asking their opinions, but she didn't say anything. Before, she only thought of Qi Heiran and Mu Yangling as children. She didn't take it seriously, but in the past 2 years, Qi Heiran kept running here and was very attentive to her and her aunt, so she naturally knew what this meant. Whenever Qi Ziyuan showed any dissatisfaction or disapproval, she would stop the two from interacting, but he took an attitude of acquiescence. A daughter is so capable, can she only marry a mountain villager in the future? Naturally, Xu Huanyang was unwilling, so she acquiesced in her running after Qi Heiran in a hurry, but this did not mean that she agreed with the child who agreed to the marriage without even telling his family. Xu Huanyang picked up a pen and wanted to educate her daughter, but she still couldn't write anything after sitting at the table for a long time. Forget it, let her fly when she grows up. Mu Yangling, who can already fly, still doesn't know anything. She is arranging for Zhonglu to take over all the victims. She will go to collect the sheep tomorrow. The Qin butcher and Hua butcher she has been waiting for a long time finally came. They brought a bit of good news and bad news. The good news is that they plan to go out of Xinyuan Mansion and sell the sheep all the way to Zhongling, Xiangyang. They have found all the sellers along the way, and they have recruited a dozen guys to escort them all the way, so the demand for the sheep will only increase. The bad news is that the journey is too far, and they only plan to take one trip, so for the greater benefit, Qin Butcher and Hua Butcher hope to owe Mu Yangling's share of the money first, and settle the settlement when they come back. If you agree, when they come back, Mu Yangling will earn half more money. If you don't agree, although you will earn half less, the money has already been obtained. No matter how the subsequent sales are, Mu Yangling will not lose money. Mu Yangling thought for a long time, and finally said, "You are only 16 people, can you see so many sheep? We invite all strong and tough guys who are on the road. As long as you don't encounter bandits, you should be fine. What if you meet bandits?" Butcher Qin and Butcher Hua looked at each other, both hesitated. Mu Yangling paced on the spot and said after a while, "I think it's better to take it one step at a time. If the stall is too big, I'm afraid it won't be easy to close." Hua Butcher frowned, and Mu Yangling could understand his eagerness. After all, they made a lot of money last year, there are a lot of refugees this year, and there must be more bandits on the mountain. This sheep is different from Silk Tea. With a flick of the whip, the cart puller's mules can gallop out. Sheep are tied together, as long as people block the intersection, you can't get out no matter what. Butcher Qin glanced at Butcher Hua, and said, "Old Hua, I think Miss Mu is right, or we'd better make a few more trips, rather work harder than waste the money. Our money is not easy to come by. When we rested after the new year last year, we were so thin that we lost our shape, and we only had one breath. This money was earned by us with all our efforts, and we can't send it to others." Hua Butcher gritted his teeth, stomped his feet and said, "Okay, I'll follow your orders and make a few more trips." Mu Yangling breathed a sigh of relief, got up and said with a smile, "Then I will start to collect the goods for you tomorrow, and you can rest in the inn." Qin Tuhu sent Mu Yangling out, and said with a smile, "I thought you were also in favor of taking risks, but I didn't expect you to persuade us instead." Mu Yangling smiled and said, "I will take risks when it's worth taking, but I prefer to be safe." Mu Yangling sighed, "I need money urgently now, so I can't make mistakes." Butcher Qin laughed and said, "If the goods are delivered to us, your business will be considered a success. Even if someone robs you in the end, we have to give you the money." Mu Yangling glanced at him and said, "You're all out of stock, where did you get the money? Don't you have to pay it back then?" Butcher Qin smiled, and said in a low voice, "We know you are loyal, and you don't want to force us. Don't worry, this trip will go well with so many people added." Mu Yangling nodded. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck." Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 328. I have news about the calves you asked me to inquire about. Butcher Chin took out a few pieces of paper from his pocket and said, "You want 700 calves at once. I can't find so many for a while, I can only find these." Mu Yangling opened it and found that the villages and towns on the pipeline from Xinyuan Mansion to Zhongling Mansion were all marked, which should be their investigation when they were looking for mutton sales. Not all, but it covers 5 or 6 points. Do you want it? If you want it, we will bring it to you when we come back. I won't make you much, just $5 per head. How about it? Mu Yangling smiled and said, "Then thank you, Uncle Chin, but the road is not safe, so you should buy less for the first time. By the way, I want more than 700 pieces this time. I will keep them as long as you can take." Butcher Chin raised his eyebrows in surprise, and Mu Yangling explained, "My cattle farm has expanded again." The cattle farm has expanded again, and there is also sufficient labor, so Mu Yangling naturally wants to raise more cattle. Cows that are half a year old can go to work in the fields, and they can mate and give birth to calves when they are 1.5 years old. Mu Yangling has figured it out very clearly that if they are raised for one winter, they will be useful when plowing the fields in spring. They will be raised for 1 year next year. After spring, some cows who have reached the age can be mated and reserved for breeding. In this way, the cattle in the cattle farm can be sold outside in just 2 years, and she believes that one day, every farmer here will be able to own a cow. Mu Yangling went to collect sheep for them with great ambitions. This time, she only brought Bowen by her side, and the two of them drove the mule cart around the villages, because she had already collected sheep once last year, and everyone was familiar with Mu Yangling. The old way, take her to her own sheepfold and let her choose, 2 by 2. This time it was Bowen who was in charge of calculating the money and dealing with the folks. Mu Yangling was only responsible for catching sheep and watching them, and he didn't say more than 10 sentences along the way. At first, Bowen's face was still a little red, but when he saw that the people opposite him listened to him respectfully with their heads bowed, and his sister didn't interrupt, he gradually became calmer. Mu Yangling drove the flock to Chin Butcher and Hua Butcher, and settled the bill on the spot. Mu Yangling took Bowen back and asked him, "How do you feel? Farmers are suffering too much." Mu Yangling was taken aback for a moment. She was asking him how he felt about the communication, but she didn't bother with this question, she just continued to ask, and then, "Sister, if we can really cultivate high-quality seeds as you said and increase the yield, then this situation may be broken." "Sister, I also want to go home and farm." Mu Yangling's hands were itchy, but he still didn't hit anyone. He just thought for a while and said, "Bowen, do you think that farmers suffer only because of low grain output? This is just an objective reason. The country's mechanism is incomplete. The people are hungry, and the people are still suffering when the harvest is good. When it is prosperous, the people are suffering, and when it dies, the people are also suffering. You should think about why this is. Okay, this is your homework this winter. Write a policy and I will check it when I go home for the new year." Bowen's eyes widened, but his younger sister taught him to face up to difficulties, so he just pouted and agreed. "It seems that he will stay up late at night again. Since you want to write this policy theory, you can't just follow us. You have to go deep into the people and experience it firsthand, so that you can know where they are suffering. So tomorrow morning, you will eat the same porridge as them, and let's cut the pasture with the sickle, chat with them, ask them what their life was like before, how they became victims of disasters, what the way of escape is like this way, and what plans they have for the future, young, small, ask boys, youths, old people, men and women, go ahead." Bowen felt that this task was too difficult, but he still went back to the house and wrote down the outline. He decided to go to the children who were about his age first, and then go to the children who were 3 or 4 years old. Bowen also knew that breaking into the crowd was to become like them, so he spent a whole night finally finding out his oldest clothes, but even so, it would look very new in front of those kids. After thinking about it, he took the clothes outside to grind against the stones, so the next day he appeared in front of everyone wearing clothes that were too worn out. Ziyuheng and Xiaolan couldn't help opening their mouths when they saw Bowen like this. Even when the Mu family was in the most difficult time, Mu Bowen, the baby of the Mu family, did not wear this kind of clothes. Mu Bowen blushed slightly, and said coyly, "Cousin, others can't see who I am like me, right?" Mu Bowen's hair was messed up a bit, and he was wearing tattered clothes, and some ashes were painted on his face, so he really couldn't see his original appearance. Knowing that he was going to practice among the victims, Xiaolan looked at her pitifully, and timidly asked her sister, "Sister, do I want to go too?" "You don't need to go," Ziyuheng frowned, and said, "You are with the children in our military camp today, the new ones are too rebellious, I'm afraid you will be bullied if you go." He was there to inquire about news, and it doesn't matter which side he is on, so he naturally chose the easy one, so he nodded in agreement. Ziyuheng went into the room and served him millet porridge, with side dishes on the table, and said, "Hurry up, the workers are here too, you have to catch up with them." "Cousin, I have to go out and eat with them." "You should eat this millet porridge." Both Ziyuheng and Xiaolan were taken aback. This millet porridge is Bowen's privilege. It also contains barley and yam, which is a dietary prescription prescribed by MRSTA. Millet is not cheap, and barley is more expensive, not to mention that yam can only be bought in. I bought it in the pharmacy. At the beginning, my cousin worked hard because the Bowen diet therapy cost a lot of money. "If you don't eat this, what will you eat?" Ziyuheng asked in a daze. "I go out and eat polenta with them." "How can I do that?" Ziyuheng was worried secretly. "We feel that our stomachs are bloated after eating too much polenta." "You have a bad stomach, how can you eat it?" Bowen said with a smile, "Mr. Dada said that my body has taken care of me, and now my stomach may be stronger than yours." "Okay, this is the arrangement of my sister. If I don't eat the same food as them, how can I get along with you, can they talk?" Ziyuheng immediately took out some porridge from the bowl and stuffed it for him, saying, "Then eat some porridge first, hurry up, or I won't let you go out." Bowen could only eat half a bowl of millet porridge before he was let out. He took a small bowl and jogged to the crowd to line up. Glancing at Mu Bowen, he poured a bowl full for him, but he was muttering in his heart that this kid is an idiot, whoever comes to make porridge doesn't always have a big bowl. It was the one over 1 year old who was holding a big guy not much smaller than his head in line, but this one took a small bowl. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 329. Hey, have you heard? The boss is going to distribute winter clothes to children under the age of 12. A woman in her 30s grabbed her companion and said enviously. The companion pouted, and said, "This is all news a few days ago, you only know now that the clothes are ready. That's all right, no matter how envious you are, you have no place in it. It's not for me, but it's for my son. He's only 8 years old this year, just in time. I don't know if the host will have someone in the next spring. You have time, Fang's Hifu has allocated so many lands to us, and we can be busy with the work in the land. I can't come, but the children can come too. I'm in charge of the food. Half-grown children eat me to death, and I don't do much work. If the pasture is paid, I will let him come even if I don't pay him for a bowl of food." The companion rolled his eyes and said, "I heard that there are thousands of calves to be raised. Look at the ones that have been delivered in the past few days. We can't even count them. They are few, so maybe they will really invite people. I don't know if I can catch up with Miss Ziyuheng. If I can, maybe I can reserve a spot. There were quite a few people who heard this, so Ziyuheng found that there were always people around her recently, who were extremely attentive. She used to take the initiative to help when she was doing accounts, and even someone brought her tea and water and moved the stool. Ziyuheng just raised her eyebrows and didn't ask why, she just turned around and went back to find Zhonglu. Zhonglu thought for a while and said, "Now both states know that we need calves for a large cattle farm. There are many people who have sent calves over in the past few days. They see it and know that we will hire workers next year, so I want to please Miss Cousin so that I can compete for the next spot." "They want to come? Not to work in the fields. It's for the kids." Ziyuheng nodded. She just said, "Hanshong Mansion is short of everything now, especially the labor force. It is better in winter and slack season, but don't even think about hiring people during the busy farming season. Only these children can come to the cattle farm to do some odd jobs work." Thinking of Mu Yangling's plan to expand the cattle farm to 3,000 cattle, she didn't say anything, just nodded and said, "If someone asks you, don't just accept it, just say that the owner will arrange it next year." Zhonglu responded. Mu Yangling went to make a deal with Butcher Qin. Butcher Qin drove 365 calves over here this time, but after not seeing each other for a few days, Butcher Qin lost a lot of weight. When he saw Mu Yangling, he breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Miss Mu, finally, I can live to see you." Mu Yangling found a knife wound on Hua Tuhu's face, and asked in surprise, "What's wrong?" Butcher Hua smiled wryly. "Fortunately, after listening to Miss Mu's persuasion, we encountered robbers on the road." Fortunately, there were not many robbers on the road. There were about 10 people on our side, so we saved the flock. Otherwise, this time it would really be a waste of money. There is no return. Mu Yangling's face darkened, then their business might not be able to continue. Sure enough, Qin Butcher and Hua Butcher said, "The road from Hanshong Mansion to Xinyuan Mansion is fine, but Xinyuan Mansion further east is in chaos. The refugees scattered from Tongchuan Mansion went up to the mountains to become bandits, and because there were not many of them, the imperial court didn't care about it." "How many people?" "There are only a dozen or 20 in the group, and fortunately they are not many, otherwise we would not be able to escape." "Then this business." Butcher Qin and Butcher Hua looked at each other, shook their heads and said, "It's okay to go to Xinyuan Mansion, but it's not good to go out of Xinyuan Mansion. Miss Mu, we definitely won't be able to buy so many sheep, so we'll just make a trip. We also found this calf for you in Xinyuan Mansion. There is nothing to do if there are too many of them." Mu Yangling nodded, with a smile on his face, "Thank you all too." Mu Yangling settled the accounts with them, and after the money and goods were settled, they began to discuss how many sheep they would take away this time, and Bowen had already led the people to drive the calves back first. "Uncle Qin, you have traveled a lot along the way, and there is still something I need your help with." Qin Butcher leaned forward slightly, and said with a smile, "Miss Mu, just say what we can do. You two also know that I don't have time to go out now, so I would like to ask you to help me promote the cattle farm along the way. If anyone wants to sell a calf, just bring it. I will definitely give them a suitable price." It was just a word, and Butcher Qin immediately complied. Mu Yangling went to Fang's Hifu again, hoping that he could support the construction of the cattle farm through official channels and attract more people to drive the calves here. Fang's Hifu also thought about renting her cattle in the spring of next year, which would be a simple matter, and he would be happy to do it, so he agreed. There are many people who bring their calves to the cattle farm to sell. There are cattle dealers, and most of them bring their own calves together. The price Mu Yangling gave was very fair. Even though it would take several days to bring a calf over a long distance, Mu Yangling would give an extra 2 cents for the trip, and the couple would earn less than 100 yuan a month. It was a huge sum of money for the farmers in Wenwen. When the news spread, those who had calves at home were more willing to bring them to the cattle farm, which made the price of calves on the market rise a bit. On the day of the winter solstice, the number of cattle in the cattle farm had reached 3,085, and Mu Yangling then sent word that after 5 days, the cattle farm would no longer accept cattle. As for why the cows were not collected on the same day, it was naturally for the sake of the people who were already on the road at this time. They couldn't have worked so hard to bring the cattle to the cattle farm but not collect them, right? At this time, the room and the cow shed of the cattle farm have been built, and more than 3,000 cows have been driven into the cow shed. Mu Yangling divided the cattle farm into 3 areas. One area has 1,000 cows, and there are not many odd ones. A district has a district chief, who is in charge of 10 people, and one person is responsible for about 100 calves. And Zhongwu and Zhonglu are in charge of these 33 people. And the harvesting of the pasture is also finishing, and the pasture that has been dried is piled up in the room, the roof of the cowshed and the thatched house. The settlement at the barracks is wages, while the settlement at the good people is food. In order to prevent looting, Fang's Hifu specially brought the government servants to maintain order that day. Because of the large number of people, Mu Yangling directly invited soldiers from the 5th Battalion to come over to help pay wages and food. Fang's Hifu looked at the dark area in the cattle farm, the copper coins in the bamboo basket behind Ziyuheng, and the piles of grain not far away, and sighed to Mu Yang, "Business makes a lot of money, no wonder I'm so big." Many people lost their fields to engage in business. The business of the Great Zhou dynasty was very prosperous, surpassing any previous dynasty. Mu Yangling did not deny this. Although the current dynasty looked down on merchants in various ways, it did not restrict the development of business. Fang's Hifu's eyes were full of melancholy. Emperor Sejong made a mistake. If he could emphasize agriculture and suppress business, there would be no uncultivated land and no food in the treasury. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 330. Mu Yangling curled his lips in disapproval, and asked, "Master Fang really thinks that the current situation is caused by businessmen's profits?" Seeing the sarcasm in Mu Yangling's eyes, Fang's Hifu said, "There must be some connection." Mu Yangling said flatly, "The businessman is so pitiful, he took the blame for you for no reason." Fang's Hifu's face was a little embarrassed. Mu Yangling's words were short of saying, "You are the fault of the common people." He rubbed his nose and stopped talking, but Mu Yangling said, "Lord Fang, although my money came from selling sheep, it can still be regarded as saving the common people, right?" Fang's Hifu was even more embarrassed, nodded repeatedly and said, "Yes, the previous remarks were not aimed at Miss Mu." Only then was Mu Yangling satisfied. Although there were many people, all wages were paid from morning to noon. Mu Yangling glanced at the crowd that hadn't dispersed, nodded to Ziyuheng, and Ziyuheng raised her voice, "All children under the age of 12 stand up and line up to get winter clothes." The crowd was agitated, but because the news had been spread a few days earlier, although everyone was excited, they did not become confused. The children screamed, ran towards the side, and lined up again. Ziyuheng said loudly, "Including children who have reached the age of 12, we have a list here, it is not allowed to claim more than one, the older ones give way to the younger ones, and crowding is not allowed." The few teenagers who had been watching heard that there were also 12-year-olds. They all shouted and rushed over happily. The rest of the teenagers looked at them enviously, but no one spoke harshly. Those usually slippery old people didn't make a fuss, just looked at the group of children with a quiet smile. Fang's Hifu stroked his beard, and said sincerely, "This officer thanked Miss Mu for the children. Prefect Fang wants to thank me, so please support the cattle farm in the future." Fang's Hifu smirked and said, "Definitely, definitely." The clothes were distributed by the 20 old women who cooked. They knew what clothes to distribute to the children just by looking at them, so they moved very quickly. A set of cotton clothes, including a cotton jacket and cotton trousers, the cotton stuffed inside is very good cotton. When Mu Yangling asked people to make the clothes, they made them bigger. Therefore, except for a few people who just fit, the cotton clothes are long for everyone else. After a while, everyone was even more grateful to Mu Yangling. This long part can be worn by them for 2 more years, and then passed down to the younger siblings. It was the winter solstice at this time, and the wind blew like ice sand on their faces. Although these children had several clothes on, they were all thin and tattered, and they didn't keep warm at all. Now that they got cotton clothes, some of the children just put them on, while some felt that their clothes were too dirty and wanted to go back to take a bath and wash their clothes before putting on brand new cotton clothes. Mu Yangling took another booklet from Ziyuheng, moved a chair, and stood directly on it. Zhongwu beat the gong and drum to signal everyone to be quiet. The crowd gradually quieted down. Mu Yangling took out the roster and said, "The ones who are orphans stand to the left." The children all looked at Mu Yangling blankly. Mu Yangling looked down at the confused eyes of the children, and said in a slow voice, "The little general handed over all the orphans to me to take care of them before he left. Because you are too young to live alone, the barracks arranged for you. I have a list here, but because there are too many people, I don't want to read them one by one. Everyone should stand to the left consciously." As soon as the words came out, the children all ran to the right. Although we got along quite happily during this period of time, everyone was still mostly afraid of the military camp. Now I heard that orphans have another place to go. Not only those children, but also those adults and old people also think in a bad way. The news of Mu Yangling's construction of the kindergarten has not been spread. Even the soldiers in the military camp don't know much about it. They only know that they obey orders to build rows of houses in Zhuangzi, and they don't know how to inquire about it. Because in the military camp, the most important thing is to keep secrets, and don't ask questions that shouldn't be asked. Mu Yangling saw that there were only 20 or so very young children standing there blankly, and the others ran to the right, and many of them were dragged by their parents. "I'm afraid I'm going to run away." Mu Yangling directly took out the roster and said, "Since everyone is unconscious, I will read the names." Many children's eyes were red. Among them, a child of about 7 or 8 years old hesitated, then dragged his 2-year-old sister to the left, and couldn't help crying when he stood still. With the first one, although the child on the right was reluctant, he passed by. The younger one burst into tears, and the older one looked at Mu Yangling full of hatred. Mu Yangling didn't explain, but just continued to look to the right. After no one stood up, Mu Yangling asked someone to count the number of people. When she found that there were 25 people missing, she looked to the right, opened the roster, and said, "If you don't stand up, then I will roll the roll one by one, and you will still be found in the end, but lunch will be delayed. If you stand up now and everyone disperses, we can enter the house for lunch." Mu Yangling looked at them quietly. After about 2 minutes, a boy stood up, and then a boy who was pulling a 5 or 6-year-old boy. When all the people were there, Mu Yangling looked to the right and said, "The children with parents return to their parents." The children scattered and ran into the crowd to find their mothers or grandparents. Mu Yangling's eyes searched the crowd, and he waved his hand until he was sure that there was no replacement. "Okay, let's all leave." Mu Yangling jumped off the stool, and the other magistrate nodded. "Master Fang, you'd better count the number of people over there, and bring them over tomorrow," he said with a slight smile. "Don't spread the matter about the nursery." Fang's Hifu knew about Mu Yangling's concerns. If news about the nursery home got out, many parents would abandon their children and make them orphans. After all, Mu Yangling's nursery school not only provided them with food, housing, and clothing, but they also asked people to teach them literacy and crafts. Fang's Hifu nodded in agreement, and left with more than 6,000 good people, and there were only more than 700 orphans left in the cattle farm. Everyone looked at Mu Yangling quietly. Some children's eyes were still red and swollen, and some were even hiccuping, which showed how miserable they were crying just now. Mu Yangling stood back on the chair again and said, I know what you are thinking, but since the little general brought you back, he will not let you go, let alone harm you. Now you are military households, 5 those who are not in the battalion will be under the protection of General Qi and the young general. Mu Yangling slowed down his tone, trying to make everyone understand her words. The land under your name is now leased to me, and you will be independent when you reach the age of 14, and you will be able to get yours back at that time. Before that, you have to live together in the nursery, and I will take care of your food and clothing, and I will take care of your sickness. The little general also asked me to hire a husband for you, no matter the boy, they are still girls, and they all have to go to the classroom to learn to read, and the older ones have to learn some skills while reading. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 331. The older children understood. They stared at Mu Yangling in disbelief with their eyes wide open, while the younger ones looked at her blankly. They didn't understand, but they were sensitive to the emotional changes in the scene. The big brothers seemed to be less angry and panicked. Mu Yangling clapped his hands and said, Okay, now I'm going to have lunch with my own bowl, and then take a rest. I'll take you to the nursery, and you will live in it tonight. These children had been living with the disaster victims before, and their luggage had been robbed long ago on the road. If they hadn't met Yuan Hui, they might not have survived, so they had nothing to pack. Because of the lack of security, all the valuable things are hung on the body, which are just the clothes on the body and the rice bowl in the hand. Of course, now the cotton coat and the copper coins given by Mu Yangling have been added. Before, they were worried that these things would not be kept, but now it seems that they don't have to worry about it. Everyone consciously queued up to get porridge for lunch. Then Mu Yangling took them to the nursery. The nursery is arranged in 5 large rows, and each row has 2 rows of houses. 12 rooms. The room is about 40 square meters. There are 2 big kongs, one on the left and one on the left, and a desk in the middle and back. There are 6 and 12 stools in total. Each room accommodates 12 people. Men and women live separately, because men and women are different. Mu Yangling arranged the girls in the last 2 opposite rows, leaving nothing in between. Brothers live in the same house, and sisters live in the same house. After the 2 types are separated, they are divided according to age, and the older ones take care of the younger ones, so they take care of each other. Mu Yangling gathered the children in the cafeteria and said, Children, you may not understand what I said, but I hope you remember that although you are young, you have experienced a lot. You should know that life is difficult, but no matter how difficult it is, we survived, so I hope you can continue to live in the future, live happily, and live comfortably. Remember the people who have helped you and the people you have helped. I don't need you to be kind people, but I hope that each of you can have a clear heart. Everyone looked at Mu Yangling, who was standing on the chair. Mu Yangling looked back at them quietly and said, The nursery has very little money, so there are very few people who can afford it. The young man opened his mouth and murmured, Miss, we can do the work by ourselves without hiring anyone. Yes, miss, we don't invite anyone. Everyone looked at Mu Yangling timidly, for fear that Mu Yangling would take back what he had said before, and they would return to the victims of the disaster or live on the streets. The corners of Mu Yangling's mouth turned slightly, but he said worriedly, Children over 6 years old naturally don't need to be taken care of, but there are still younger ones. Mu Yangling's gaze was fixed on a 3-year-old child in front of him. This child had no brothers or sisters. He was taken by his grandmother. He died when he was in Stone City. So the child survived tenaciously. When Chi Heiran brought him back, the child who had taken care of him before also dragged him and stumbled after him. Everyone followed Mu Yangling's gaze, and the clever boys and girls immediately said, "We can take care of our brothers and sisters. We can cook. We can help them bathe, do their laundry. Take them to sleep, miss, we will take good care of them." Everyone eagerly promised, and the room suddenly became chaotic. Mu Yangling raised his hand, suppressed everyone's voices, nodded and said, "In that case, I can rest assured. I will allocate rooms to everyone in a while. Remember, the older ones should take care of the younger ones, and they are not allowed to bully them, and everyone supervises and helps each other, remember." The children nod. "I will teach you the ingredients in the nursery, and you will manage them. Although you said you can cook, I still invite some people to help. These people will be managed by you. The managers are divided into 10 groups. One group will be in charge for 5 days, and I will ask someone to teach you how to keep accounts, and I hope you can get started before spring comes. Except for the kitchen, I will call someone to help, and you will do all the other things by yourself." Mu Yangling said, "You have 5 days to get used to the life here, and after 5 days, the gentleman I invited will come on. When the time comes, you have to read and read with the gentleman. Whether you are a boy or a girl, you can choose the craft you are interested in to learn. But considering that you will all be farming in the future, you must learn agriculture, understand?" "Understood," the children replied loudly, their eyes full of hope, and they looked at Mu Yangling excitedly. Although what Mu Yangling said has not been realized yet, everyone can't help but trust her. Mu Yangling nodded secretly, beckoned to Bowen and Ziyuheng, and said to everyone, "These 2 days, you will be in charge of them, and follow them to get used to life in the nursery. There is a nursery at the stone tablet in front of you. Everyone must memorize the regulations and the penalties for violations, and understand the meaning of them, and no one is allowed to violate them." When everyone saw the blog post, their eyes widened in surprise. Ziyuheng and the others knew that she was a cousin who often kept accounts with an account book. On top, Mu Yangling quickly resolved their doubts. "Bowen is my younger brother and Ziyuheng is my cousin. When you see us in the future, you don't need to call us Miss Boss. We are just like you. We are all military households of the 5th Battalion. I am taking care of you because you are still young, and when you meet me in the future, you can call me Sister Mu, whatever you call me. There are teenagers who don't understand, Mu Yangling is younger than them, why do they always call them children? Return to Sister Mu. Some teenagers are over 12 years old, a few months older than Mu Yangling, and that sister can't be called out." Mu Yangling didn't waste everyone's time any longer, distributed some daily necessities to everyone, and began to allocate rooms for them. This is based on the previous roster, which not only includes everyone's age, but also their relationship, and there are also blog posts added after investigation, who has a better relationship with whom, and who has conflicts with whom. Mu Yangling separated the people based on these. There is a quilt in each room, 1 bed for 2 people, 1 bed for 6 people, and 1 housekeeper for each room. He is responsible for all the arrangements in the room. Mu Yangling allocated rooms for them, and handed over all the people to Bo Wen and Jiu Hong, saying, "You will arrange the rest of the matter, and each one must be arranged. You should live here for the next 5 days. When things are arranged, we will go back." It was the first time that Bowen and Ziyuheng were independently responsible for such a big matter, and they were both a little nervous. Although Ziyuheng had done bookkeeping and coordination in the cattle farm, Zhongwu and Zhonglu were the ones who took the lead after all. Here, many things were handled by her and Bowen. Discuss and make up your mind. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 332. Mu Yangling still hadn't made up her mind on who the nursery would be handed over to in the end, because she couldn't find a suitable person. They are full of helpless children. They have endured hardships and can endure them. As long as they don't kill them, they can endure hardships, and anyone can control them. But what Mu Yangling wants is not control. She doesn't want these children to want to grow up and leave the nursery. She hopes that they can enjoy the joy of growing up and learn what they should learn. Since she has already taken charge of this matter, they are her responsibility. Naturally, she wants to strive for better. She does not need a cold management rule, or even someone who will bully them, but a wise and loving educator. Since she couldn't find anyone, she could only take care of it for the time being, running back and forth. Fortunately, Fang's Hifu sent his orphans the next day. As a result, there were a total of 1,238 orphans in the nursery. The room was a little tense, and Mu Yangling felt that waiting for this cold wave in the past, it was possible to ask people to draw a piece of land on the side to rebuild 5 rows of rooms, so that men and women were separated on both sides, and some classrooms could be expanded in the middle. Anyway, she brought it up. Both Chi Heiran and Fang's Hifu would agree to help, except for the workers' 3 meals a day. She didn't have to pay anything. Mu Yangling found the leading children and said, "We are going home, and the nursery will be handed over to you for the time being. I will come and have a look at it from time to time. When you have any questions, please contact me." I said, "This place is very close to the military camp and the nearby Zhuangzi. Try not to have conflicts with them. If someone comes to provoke you, you can solve it yourself. If you can't, go to their village chief. Just tell me yes, this nursery school was moved out of the way by the little general. The nearby villages are all new villages newly built by the victims of the disaster. In the past 2 days, news of the nursery has spread. It is said that not only food and clothing are provided for the children, but also that they can learn to read and write. Many people brought their children to the village, knelt outside and begged Mu Yangling to accept it. Mu Yangling's face was very ugly, probably to soften her heart. Those children didn't wear the new cotton-padded clothes, but knelt in the cold wind wearing thin clothes. Mu Yangling turned a blind eye to them for the past 2 days. Seeing more and more people kneeling at the door, Mu Yangling finally lost his temper yesterday. He took a kitchen knife from the kitchen and left it in front of them. "Only orphans are accepted, and you can send your children here if you want. The first thing is that everyone in his family who has read the 14th year will wipe their necks. Also, all the military land and Yanjai land under his name are leased to me. It is to raise them up, and if you want to, start wiping your neck now." The kneeling people didn't expect Mu Yangling to be so ruthless. Sometimes they muttered and cursed, and sometimes they cried mournfully and begged Mu Yangling to let them go, just like how Mu Yangling bullied them. Mu Yangling sneered and said, "You just cry, it annoys me. I go to trouble you every day. I have more than 1,200 children under my control. I will let 10 people go to your house to make troubles a day, and I will make you 10 years old. You can't live a stable life. If you don't believe me, just try it. Ziyuheng, write down their names for me, and when you turn around, you will drag them away, howling in front of their house. I want to see who can persist until at last." The crying and scolding person paused, looked up at the group of children behind Mu Yangling, and stopped talking, but they couldn't help but blame Mu Yangling for being too cruel. When Ziyuheng heard their scolding, she couldn't help but snorted coldly, and raised her voice. "It is said that my cousin is cruel, but my cousin is just treating others in the same way. Some people even kill their own children. Our sons and daughters can be pinned on the ice, but we have no relatives and no reason for them, but we feel sorry for them. Our own children don't feel sorry, who do we expect?" Bowen glanced at the child who was kneeling in the cold wind, sighed, and persuaded, "Take the child back to get dressed. It is such a cold day. If you get a cold from the cold, it will kill you. My sister, they will not accept these children. The nursery is to take care of those children without parents and relatives. Our family has already emptied our family property for this. Let alone your adults are still alive. Even if we send orphans from outside, we will not be able to accept them. Really, it's unaffordable. Everyone listened to what Bowen said, but put away the resentment in their eyes, and wanted to drag the child away. Mu Yangling supported his forehead with a headache, and nodded slightly to Bowen. Bowen immediately said, "Everyone, don't leave in a hurry. In such a cold day, if the wind blows all the way back, even if you are not sick, you can become sick. Go to the cafeteria to drink first a bowl of ginger soup, let the children walk slowly." Bowen took the initiative to take a few older children in the nursery to the cafeteria to drink ginger soup. In this way, most of the annoyance on the faces of those adults disappeared, and some of them still had a little shame on their faces. A few of them still stared at Mu Yangling and the others darkly. Mu Yangling just snorted coldly and turned around and left without paying attention to those people. When he returned to the office, he couldn't help feeling a little headache, and Ziyuheng also said angrily, "If it weren't for the fact that these villages are not far from the nursery, we will deal with each other frequently in the future, I really don't want to bother with them." It is precisely because of this consideration that Mu Yangling arranged for Bowen to sing the red face, and she and Ziyuheng to sing the bad face. Fortunately, the military camp is not far from here, so there can't be any big conflicts, but the dean needs to find it quickly, otherwise I really can't handle it. Mu Yangling has never been good at dealing with such conflicts, and has always upheld the idea of using violence to control violence. "But cousin, what kind of job are you looking for? There are quite a few applicants these days. They are not good. When it comes to the children in the nursery, they all look like charity. When you take them to watch the children play, I will watch from the side. The haughty look is like looking at a beggar. I let them take care of the children and educate them, not give them alms. Forget it, I would rather be short than excessive. The responsibility of the dean will be vacant for now. You and I will take care of the nursery first. Tomorrow I will send you back first. My mother has sent letters to remind me several times, and I have not been home during the winter solstice, so my aunt is very angry." Ziyuheng stuck out her tongue, not daring to object. The winter solstice is a very important festival here, and its grandness is no less than that of the second dragon raising its head in February. It's strange to say that in previous lives, besides the spring festival, the Mid-Autumn Festival was paid more attention to, but in this era, the Mid-Autumn Festival is not very important. Except for the Spring Festival, the most solemn festival is February 2nd, the Dragon Boat Festival and the Winter Solstice. Dispensable meaning. Therefore, Mu Yangling and the others were absent from the important winter solstice. Not only the aunt was angry, but even the good-tempered Shu Wanyang was angry. So they can't drag on here any longer. Bowen took a few older children to repair the relationship with those people. Until the evening he realized that he really couldn't keep the children, so he had to take them away in despair. Bowen felt tired for the first time. Although the people left, I don't know if they would make excuses to find fault. Before he left, Mu Yangling found the older children in the nursery and told them again, and finally said, "If he doesn't care or delays in finding the village chief, you should go to the cattle farm to find Zhang Wu and Zhang Lu, let them inform me. Remember, it is important to protect yourself and your younger brothers and sisters. This is for them to try not to get into a physical fight with them, it's too dangerous." The older children all complied.